We all know someone who is a little delicate. Perhaps they are very skinny and lanky. They do everything they can to avoid tripping, falling, or getting roughed up. It's almost like they're made of glass. But and they all know they aren't. Or do they? This would not be an unusual occurrence. In medieval times, nobility were known to believe they were formed of glass. Science wasn't very advanced back then. People who had the glass delusion were experiencing exactly that, a delusion. This video will go into the history of something called the glass delusion, some of the most notable people who experienced it, and whether or not it existed in medieval times. The glass delusion is one of psychology's greatest riddles, and it's undoubtedly one of the most intriguing delusions in history. So, the 16th and 17th centuries were periods of rapid expansion in the Western world. European empires were beginning to grow in North America, and their nobility wielded more influence than ever. During this time, there were significant cultural and artistic developments. The Mona Lisa was painted, the Baroque period began, and innovations with glass altered the way we saw ourselves. According to academics, mirrors were invented about this period. Mirrors are now an integral part of our daily lives, although they were once thought to be more magical than functional. During this time, history reveals that a lot of nobility suffered what we call glass illusion. They believed that their physical bodies were composed of glass. What's remarkable about the glass hallucination is that it was most popular among this particular group of people. Not everyone in medieval times wrapped themselves in blankets and took care not to bump against anything. This misconception was most likely to affect the wealthy and educated. Glass delusion appears in plays and literature from this time period, including a character known as the glass graduate. You should also be aware that not everyone who suffers from the delusion experiences it in the same way. Some thought their entire bodies, from head to toe, were composed of glass. Others claimed that only their internal organs were composed of glass. Many people, including King Charles VI, believed that he had a glass buttocks. People like him wandered around with cushions attached to their buttocks to avoid breaking their behind. King Charles VI was among the most well-known aristocrats who suffered from glass illusion. He became king at the age of 11, and while he was first known as Charles the Beloved, he shortly became Charles the Mad. Starting in his early 20s, King Charles VI suffered from several mental illnesses, including the glass illusion. These incidents included him believing he was Saint George and entirely forgetting that he was the King of France. He didn't always recognize his wife, and he refused to bathe or change his clothes for months on end. Indeed, entire books were written at the time about the various delusions that this king suffered from. And when it came to the glass illusion, King Charles VI was particularly suspicious and cautious. He wrapped himself in blankets so his buttocks wouldn't break. He also had iron rods sewed into his garments to prevent his body from shattering if he collided with another person. Next, we'll proceed to Princess Alexandra Emily. King Charles VI is the most renowned example of someone suffering from glass delusion, but he is not the only monarch who believed they were made of glass. Princess Alexandra Emily was the Bavarian king's daughter in the 1830s. The princess was discovered strolling suspiciously through her home, avoiding contact with any item. When asked what was wrong, the princess explained that as a youngster, she swallowed a whole grand piano made of glass. She assumed the piano was still in her body. She stated that if she touched anything, the piano would shatter. So it wasn't just one case. Why do people believe they were created of glass? Princess Alexandra Emily was one of the last documented cases of glass illusion. Occurrences appeared here and there beginning in the 1500s, but few or no occurrences were reported after the 1840s. At first inspection, this condition appears to be completely random. Why would anyone believe that they were made of glass? And why were only rich people impacted by this delusion? Understanding the medical beliefs of the historical period may provide some insight into how glass delusion evolved into a temporary mental disorder that only affected the noble class from the 16th to the 19th century. At the time, humorism was a medical study that originated in ancient Greece and Rome and continues to influence much of modern medicine. Now, the study was based on what we call the four humors, or biological fluids, which indicated some sort of mood or behavior within the body. The 4 humors included blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Now, black bile may not be what you think it is. Medical professionals at the time believed that the kidneys and spleen produced black bile. When it was produced, people used to believe that it generated melancholy and unhappiness, and that if your body produced an excess of melancholy, you would eventually feel heavy and sluggish. But there's another feature of black bile that's very relevant to glass delusion. When black bile was heated, experts said it shone like glass. This link is why many modern psychologists assume that glass delusion was a symptom of grief or paranoia. Nobles and royalty were not the only ones to feel sad. So why were they affected? We have to return to humorism for the answer. At the time, experts believed that overstimulating the mind would result in an excess of black bile, and that if a man used his intellect more than his body, he would be more likely to create this bile and become depressed. However, not all psychologists see this link between intellect and glass delusion. Others argue that glass delusion is more about privacy and transparency. According to the authors, the dread of breaking and shattering might be a severe kind of social anxiety. People who suffer from social anxiety may be afraid of falling flat on their faces or stumbling in public. In short, people do not want to be humiliated, and in certain circumstances, this can escalate from a dread of social anxiety to a worry of complete bodily parts shattering. Finally, I'd like to discuss some more recent cases of glass delusion, because other psychologists feel that glass delusion was so prevalent in the 16th and 17th centuries because glass and mirrors were such novel phenomena. Throughout history, humans have linked fear and delusion to advances in technology and culture. So which idea concerning the glass delusion is correct? Well, it's difficult to say, especially since examples of the glass delusion have been reported as late as the 20th century. It's important mentioning that these incidents were isolated. It was not as if all social classes were afflicted as they were in medieval times. But they do continue to lend mystery to the situation. A case emerged in the 1880s, another in the 1930s, and a third in the 1960s. In the most recent occurrence, a psychologist studying the man with the glass hallucination found something remarkable. The man had lately been in an accident and was surrounded by friends and relatives who were desperate to care for and protect him. The man felt overwhelmed, and the psychologist hypothesized that the glass hallucination allowed him to glide in and out of being there. If he had been translucent or see-through, he would not have had to deal with his family's overwhelming presence. So, what is the truth? In the years since the outbreaks of glass delusion, psychologists have learned a great deal about the inner workings of the body and mind. We no longer believe that black bile promotes depression or anxiety. An overworked mind does not necessarily lead to the idea that one is composed of glass. So, what is the reality behind the glass illusion? Well, we don't know for sure. There are numerous unusual, unpredictable, and temporary mental diseases that have affected huge numbers of people. Some of these strange ailments are linked to culture or class, while others follow less of a pattern. These are some of the most fascinating anecdotes in psychology, demonstrating that we still have much to learn about the workings of the mind. I want to thank you so much for viewing this video, and I hope you learned something valuable.